I'm Judah Mosiah Ben Yisrael. Now, you say you don't believe in the Bible. You say you don't believe that there's no proof that the so-called Negroes in America are the true children of Israel that this Bible speaks of, right? Okay. Now, first off, I'll start off with saying I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/JudahYisrael314, and I have documentaries on YouTube titled True Identity of the So-Called Negro. Of course, you know that there are people that stand up saying that we are the true children of Israel, or the true Jews. Not saying that they're Jewish, but they're the true Jews the Bible speaks of. Now, so what we're going to do is, we're going to get some sources outside the Bible. We don't have to use the Bible. Fine, let's set it to a side. You don't believe in it? Fine. Now, behind me I have two maps. On this side is D'Anville's map in year 1747. And behind me is a map by a man named Emmanuel Bowen, 1747. Now, I chose to this time period is because we know that this was during the time where a lot of the slaves during the Middle Passage was going to slavery to the Americas. Okay, one of the places where the slaves went was called Uda. All right, and this book is called Uda. All right, Uda, the social history of West African slaving ports. All right, so we know there are many slave ports in a place called Uda. I remember in school we were taught about the place called Slave Coast. Remember that? You remember the Gold Coast, the Tooth Coast, the Ivory Coast? Remember those places? You see them on little maps? But you never really thought about what was those names before that? Before the so-called white man named it that? All right. But we're going to focus on the Slave Coast. One of the things I'm going to bring out is a book called The Negro Question. Those of you who are questioning. All right. The African slave ships, they came from where? Judah. Now, I talk about this in part 4 of my documentary, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Part 4 of my documentary, True Identity of the So-Called Negro, part 4. Now, on here, you have the picture of the map, all right, as I have right here, all right. It says, and it's the map from Emmanuel Bowen. It says, when the European powers called up Africa, it was the custom of the European kings in those days to send out a cartographer, which is what? A map maker, to outline and pinpoint his holdings. There was a map maker in the year 1747 who went by the name of Emmanuel Bowen. This is his map here. It says, this man held the title of the royal cartographer or map maker for 2 European kings, King George II of England and King Louis XV of France. So you see, he had to have been a real deal for him to be a royal map maker for not 1 king, but 2 kings. All right. It says, what is unusual about the map that Emmanuel Bowen brought back to these 2 kings is at the center of the map, Bowen showed that the true name of the so-called slave coast was none other than the kingdom of Judah. That was the true name of what you know today as the slave coast. Look it up. Look his map up, Emmanuel Bowen. I have it right here behind me. It says, Judah was known by 4 different names at that time. Judah, Wida, or Wida, which is W-H-I-D-A-H. Some would spell it W-H-Y-D-A-H. But anyway, Uda, which is sometimes spelled with a Q. Or Abir, which is A-B-I-E-R. I hope you're writing this stuff down. That the slave coast was originally known as the Kingdom of Judah, but it had 4 different names, which I just got done naming. It says, what does this mean to those of us who have been in hot pursuit of the truth? It means that we have the proof from the royal mapmaker himself that Judah was indeed listed among the inhabitants of Africa. Of even greater interest is that the fact that the maps were not disputed by the 2 kings. So that means what? They definitely agreed that, yeah, that's the kingdom of Judah. It says, you would do well to take heed to the fact that the British laid claim to the so-called slave coast, and that its inhabitants were sold to the British colonies, and one being North America. So that means what? That the so-called slave coast, which we know is the kingdom of Judah, a lot of them came here to America, which means what? That right here in America, the kingdom of Judah resides. Okay, then it goes on bottom of page 6, he referenced this book, Creole New Orleans. Okay, and this is what he said about this book. On page 67 of this publication are the notes of a white slaver or a slave trader. recalling the inventory of human beings on a cargo ship. Let's see what he writes. Now you talking about this book. He says, he writes that 16 slave trading ships arrived from Senegal region. 6 ships came from Judah. So you see that? A guy who traded slaves said that he took that ships came from Judah and landed at the mouth of the Mississippi. And in the year 1731, one ship from Judah landed 464 slaves at the mouth of the Mississippi. On page 69 of this book, of course, it states that a company of India, right, little India, right, had a trading post at Judah. Imagine that. Then it says, there it competed with all the nations of Europe. The Portuguese was taking the upper hand at Judah. All right, talking about this book here. It says, Northwestern University, Boston University, and Louisiana State University have in their possession, documentations, calling the slave coast of Africa Judah. You see that? At these universities, they have in their documentation saying that the slave coast was called Judah. All right? And it's before the so-called white man stepped foot there. It says, if you won't believe me, surely you will believe academia. Aren't they supposed to be the caretakers of the truth? It says, you also have a town named Judah, which is A-J-U-D-A. That's the name of the town. Look it up. That was in existence before the Portuguese ever set foot on West African soil. And this is the town right here, known as Judah. All right? See that? It says, the kingdom of Judah, or aka Slave Coast, was controlled by the British. And all of these black Jews came pouring into British colonies. All right, so you want to learn more? Watch my documentary, True Identity of the So-Called Negro, for that. All right, now another book I'm going to pull out. Before we do, let me show you the map right here by Emmanuel Bowen. All right, you see up top, there's Negro land right there. We all know about that, Guinea. And look at that, there it is, Slave Coast. Slave Coast. But look closely, Kingdom of Judah, or Wida. Slave Coast, Abir, like we read in the book, Judah, Wida. See that? Look at that. All right, before we do is another map by D'Anville up here. Man, so you can see I can pull that one off really quick. We're going to learn a little bit about that. And remember, we're going into history. Okay, you see right here, Negro land was also called Negricia up there. And then under that, I see the paper I point. You can see the little yellow papers, the pinpoint. City called Lam Lam. And over here we have Falajam. All right, Shakala Jews. And if you get this map, you blow it up, and you'll see that on the map it has exiled Jews, letting you know that these people knew that these were Hebrews, Israelites, not Africans. All right, it says on page 70 of this book, From Hebrews to Negroes, it's actually 2 volumes. I have both volumes of the book. It says, in many medieval African maps, 500 AD to 1500 AD, there can be seen the words Negro land. Now remember, we just saw that, right? Negro land. It says above Guinea, which we just shown. There's Guinea, Negro land. It says, in the area known as West Africa, Negro land, sometimes called Negricia, which we just shown on this map, was an archaic European term to describe the inland and thinly explored region in West Africa where the Negro people lived. All right, Negro land comprised the western part of the region called Soyuda. All right, so you can look this up as well. It was known as Soyuda. Where's my little marker? There we go. Soyuda. All right, you can look this up. Soyuda. All right, or Sudan, which is S-O-U-D-A-N. Look this up. All right, you can look up Kingdom of Judah, 1747, Emmanuel Bowen, his map. All right, or Emmanuel Bowen's map in 1747. See for yourself. All right, but anyway, it says, not to be confused with the African country. In the earlier times, the portion of West Africa all the way straight across east to Sudan and Abyssinia, which you know today is Ethiopia, was known as Soyuda. See that? So mean the land of, and Yudah mean Judah. So all across. All right? Boom. it was known as Judah, land of Judah. It says, thus meaning the land of Judah. Therefore, the whole strip of land from West Africa to East Africa was known as Judah or Suda, and its inhabitants were multiple black Israelite communities. This eventually was changed to Sudan, which later got changed to Sudan. All right. Now on page 72. All right. It says, in 1729, a map titled Negro Land and Guinea, which we just shown back here, anyone else can see that these two regions comprise most of West Africa, where African slaves, aka Hebrew Israelites, were taken to be scattered into many nations to the west. The map shows the portion of lands in West Africa between England, Holland, Dutch, and Denmark. It says, it is a known fact that between early as 600 AD to 1800 AD, slaves were sold by the hands of native African tribes, Arab Muslims, and Europeans. So they all sold us. It says, the peoples sold into slavery during this time have been proven to be a different nation of people. They were a different nation. Although black in appearance with mixed heritage of Semitic, meaning the seed of Shem, and Hamitic origin. It says, these people are the descendants of the ancient Hebrew Israelites. They're the descendants. It says, although white slave masters didn't leave much evidence for African Americans to go by in America in regards to their heritage, Arab Muslim writers and maps, like I have here, and maps written during slave period times, bam, bam, reveal the true identity of the slaves brought to the Americas. It reveals their true identity. Look these maps up during the time of the slave trade and see what we will call, and go into the history, because I'm going to be revealing more in the future. It says, these maps can be referred, a reference, are the map of Africa by Mr. Bolton in year 1766. Negro Land and Guinea by Emmanuel Bowen in year 1747, which I have here. Guinea and Negritia by Holman Ayres in year 1737. Negro Land and Guinea by Herman Moll, which is Moll, in year 1736. And D'Anville, which is this guy here, this map, D'Anville map of Africa in year 1747. All right. You can look up this map here. All right. Now, it goes, and this is what else it says about D'Anville's map. It's the one I have right here. It says, on these maps, you can research a city called Lamlam or Lamlem, which is Lamlam or Lamlem. It is what is now modern day Niger or Nigeria. In the 12th century, Muslim geographer, Egyptologist, and cartographer, which is a map maker again, Muhammad al-Eldrisi from Ceuta, which is Ceuta. Then it has in parentheses Spain, Morocco. It says, he wrote about a black Hebrew Israelite colony called Lamlam. That's what he wrote in the 12th century. It says, in West Africa, east of Timbuktu, it has Mali. It says, Muhammad al-Eldrisi was a descendant of the Eldrisiids, Moroccan Islamic State, who in turn were descendants of Hassan bin Ali, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the grandson of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. It says, al-Adrisi writes in his book entitled Description of Central Africa. This is what he wrote in his book. It says this, in the whole land of Lamlam or Lamlem, Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger, it says there are but two small cities, or as it were villages, and those Malel and Dar situated at the distance of 4 days' journey from each other. Their inhabitants, as people of these parts relate, are Jews. See that? Most of them unbelieving and ignorant. So that's what he said about them. Then we're going to go to page 73, same map, you can look this up. Also in the area known as Sudan or Nubia, near the Nile River, but to the west of Abyssinia, there existed a Hebrew kingdom of exiled Falajam Jews called Shankala, which is Shankala. And you can see that right here on this map. All right. I have it pointed here. You get this map, look it up. You can blow it up. You can even see where it says Jews exiled. They're not from around here. All right. So you can look this up. So this information can be found. Find these maps during the time we went into slavery. All right. It says Al-Adrisi mentioned the Hebrew Israelites living in this area were attacked by native Hamitic tribe. So the native Africans attacked these Israelites that lived there. And when you look this map up, you see it was said exiled Jews. So they were calling us Israelites before slavery. It says, and were sent to slave traders who then sent them to slave trading centers to be traded to all parts of the world, just like the Bible said would happen to us. All right. It says, Al-Adrisi explains further how the black Hebrew Israelites were taken as captives to be sold into all nations. All right. Now I want to go to page 76 for time's sake, because I only got 20 minutes. Page 76, it says, in 2012, a film was released in New York City called Re-Emerging the Jews of Nigeria. That was the name of it. In the documentary, the Igbo Nigerians, now I talk about the Igbo tribe in part 3 of my documentary titled True Identity of the So-Called Negro. But anyway, it says Igbo Nigerians trace their heritage and descendants to the ancient Hebrew Israelites with documented proof. However, because of the black racism in Israel toward anybody of Afro descent claiming to be the descendants of the Israelites, they were rejected by Jewish leaders to be allowed to return to Israel. Many slaves who were stolen from Nigeria and brought to America, Virginia and Maryland, South Carolina, and North Carolina, were of Igbo or Yoruba descent. They were often called Ibos, I-B-O-S, Hebos, H-E-E-B-O-S, and Ebos, E-B-E-O-S, by the white man, derived from the word Igbo, I-G-B-O. It is said that the first British explorers to step in Nigeria identified the Igbos as a branch of Hebrews. Now, if you remember my documentary part 3, I talked about this because I pulled out the book Ibos, I-B-O-S, Hebrew exiles from Israel, showing how we exiled from Israel and how they got to Nigeria. It says, among the Igbos of Nigeria, Dr. George Thomas Baston in 1938, it is said that many slave traders called their slaves Ibos. You see that? That's what they called us. Hebos and Ebos, which many say is a corruption of the word Hebrew, Heber or Eber or Ivri. All right? Which when you go into the Hebrew, all right, it's a little messy, but it looks something like that. You got the ayin, the bet, resh, and the yod, ivri or Eber. All right, and what do you say in English? I know I wrote a little messy, but those who know Hebrew, he wrote that messy. But I had to rush through this because I got 20 minutes. All right, it says, perhaps the slave traders also who knew the slaves, because the city on the Atlantic coast of Benin, west coast of Africa, where slaves sold, was called Ouda. That's what we just got done talking about, which in Old French means Judah. See that? It says Africans living there today pronounce the name of the city in their language as Judah, just as the word Judah, J-U-D-A-H in English. It says the remains of the slave fort, the fort of Judah, still resides there where it is called the door of no return. Look this up. A place believed where the descendants of the children of Israel were sold into slavery. It says the official language of Benin today is French. The Portuguese came in the city in the 1500s and named it Judah, which is A-J-U-D-A, meaning Judah in their language. On 1747, African mastered this area, Kingdom of Judah, above Benin, in the area of old Ghana Empire existed years ago, whereas Negro land. But I got to go ahead and end it there because Facebook only allows me to do it 20 minutes. But look this information up, Emmanuel Bowen, D'Anville's map. You can see it was called the Kingdom of Judah and the places I named. Look my documentary up on YouTube if you want more information. There's plenty of proof outside the Bible. Shalom.